Dear viewers, a very warm welcome to OBN Horn of Africa. This is our weekly program, Talk to OBN. In this edition, we'll be discussing Ethiopian grand narratives, Ethiopian National Dialogue, and again, transitional justice. For his expertise, I joined by political analyst, social media influencer, and content creator, Ayana Feyissa. Ayana, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay. Before directly going to our discussion, can you exactly tell us about your upbringings, your childhood memories in Ethiopia, as well as your academic background and your current career as well?
Yeah, so I was born in Ethiopia, in Bali. It's rather further from the capital, the city life. But I went for high school, came to Bishoftu, closer to the city. And once I finished high school, I went to a theological seminary. I studied theology for 4 years. After that, I was working as a teacher. I was actually a English teacher for first to fifth graders in private schools. After that, I had a job as a relief supervisor with international organizations. Development and Social Services Commission was actually where I worked. We worked with Lutheran World Federation and Catholic Relief Services, CRC. So while I was working on that, I came to the U.S. For study. I went to Minnesota. I didn't complete that. But since I have shifted careers pretty much into the computer science, have my as management information systems degree, and I also have some certification from MIT with AI design and development. So currently, I'm working in the software development. Married, have children, and or no.
Since recently, your media contents, your contents on social media show that you got a doubt on Ethiopian narrative history. So you usually recommend Ethiopians to have a national consensus and recraft the ever existed narratives as well. What are your premises to have such conclusion in the very first place?
Oh, yeah. So the history and narrative, as we know it, two different things. But in a country like Ethiopia, where we have a lot of ethnicities, but we have history being written or narrated by only a limited number of ethnicities and religions. So we have to adapt to our new normal, our current situation of where we are as multi-ethnic nationalities, federal country. So to get to there, we'll have to have some kind of consensus, some kind of agreement and conversation. In that sense, I am not merely announcing that we should get to consensus on all our differences in our narratives and in our history, but we should have the opportunity to actually experience and to express and understand the variety of understandings of our history and our narrative. So I think that's the only way out of the circumstance we are in today's Ethiopia.
Of course, you've mentioned your reason saying that Ethiopia need to have a grand narrative that stands for everyone in a country, for every nation and nationalities, which represent its own virtue, history, wisdom, culture. For this argument, do you suggest ways and procedures in which grand narratives should be retold and entertained in Ethiopia?
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much as suggest as to utilize what we already have on the ground. And you know, whenever we have to do an inventory of sorts of what we have, what we're missing, and what we need. What we need is peaceful conversation, even when we don't get to where there is a consensus. Uh, I was just touching on some of the grand narrative, writings I've read before, and an article by Andrew in 2003. He actually, this is a different narrative than when he talks about grand national narratives, but he talks about political forgiveness too, as it pertains to East Germany. And he talks about it's not consensus as much as it is disagreements on the same platform so that you can get to a resolution of sorts, right? So for that, we have a commission that is established in Ethiopia by law. And they've been working and I've been closely, following those developments. But one of my campaigns, one of my very serious campaigns right now, I'm trying to, avoid as much politics as I can, except to leverage everything that people have towards stopping war, right? So if we are shooting, if we are on active violence, we cannot negotiate or talk or get to a consensus. So once we get to the table, once we get everybody's share is around the table, then we can actually bring this divisive ideas and topics to the table and then start negotiating. So that's the first step, is let's stop the violent method of achieving our political interest. So start there, and then we have something that's already established. Let's materialize a commission that is placed for that.
Well, Ayana, again, this is, experiences of other nations, which those nations, tabled their polarities and entertained bringing grand national narratives. Can you scholarly mention some countries which employed grand national narrative to solve their polarized thoughts among nations?
Yeah, so I want to start from Nigeria's experience because it really resembles what Ethiopia has. And I hate to butcher his name, so I'm going to look at my notes here. Adebanwi Wali is a scholar who actually talks about the social science that has changed Nigeria as we know it today. They were actually polarized, from regions being much more versed in ethnicity. There are so many ethnicities in Nigeria, but they managed to actually create a national consensus narrative, grand narrative, which is Nigeria as we know today. And the meaning of consensus and narrative, grand national narrative, is not that all grievances will go away or there isn't any political strife. It just means that there is something that is a bigger bracket that holds together. And to come back to Andrew M., who, I think 2003 again, the grand national narrative and the project of truth commissions, a comparative analysis. And in this comparative analysis, Andrew writes about South Africa and East Germany in comparison. And the comparison between these two countries, and they both have these commissions to bring together these people into a national format with grand narrative. The differences are, as for South Africa, they were trying to break away from the past and put the country into a new path, right? So that was the method they used to go into a grand narrative and nation building. As for East Germany, which is part of course Germany right now, for East Germany, they had to go back and reevaluate the entire history of the country. and to actually weigh that into the nation building process. So both ways, we have two countries today, South Africa and Germany, relatively very successful and have a nation. So and there are many more that we can attest to, but I think from African countries, Nigeria and South Africa are at the top of the list, where they have multinational situations and oppressions. In some cases, even a blue water doctrine type of colonization related issue. What makes Ethiopian difficult is we were not dealing with colonizers. So the East Germany really fits into our narrative better, I think.
I wanted you to tell me, the qualities and features of grand narratives, the qualities, for example, this are, characteristics of grand narrative, an entity which represents each and every nation in a country.
That's a good one. To get there, we have to start from the very essence or meaning of narrative. Or, sometimes we use interchangeably history and narrative. The difference is history is a sum of facts. So factual writings, or it's not 100. I always use quotation marks in the air when I say facts, because when it comes to history, what is a fact for somebody does not become a fact for another, and that is narrative, right? Narrative is the structure for organizing factual claims. So I say my factual claims are, the sun rises from the southeast and not just the east, right? And somebody says it's from the south, actually. Those are just somebody's narrative. Those are their claims. A grand narrative is how do we bring together, using history, which is a collection of facts as it pertains to a certain group or a people or country, and as a nation, how can we have a structured, organized way of claiming facts? So it doesn't have to cancel each other. It's not like ABC, your fact is there, his fact, and then let's choose one of them and the other two have to follow these facts. It just means how can we have an organized way of having everybody's narrative honored in a national, in a grand manner, right? So we have a collective grand narrative. The American way is really attractive. I didn't use it as an example for a reason, but when it comes to the United States, at its inception, people who came here came from Europe, mostly from Northern and West Europe, right? So they came here, they had their own countries, their own nationalities, they were under kings and such, and people from the Eastern Europe and Southern Europe around 1780 started joining them, and then they brought Africans by force and enslaved and then the Chinese started coming from Asia. All of that, the melting pot the US is, it has a grand narrative that is called the United States of America. Of course, it's easier to love a successful person, and if you're broke, you're hard to love. And that's why people come here, and in a few years they are willing to raise their hand and swear allegiance to that flag. But besides that, there is a grand narrative that has been constructed as this nation's identity. So people can easily tap into that and adapt into that, and even become citizens, a few hundred years after its inception. So building that narrative that everybody can buy into and everybody is comfortable with. That's why we need to go to consensus. That's why we need to negotiations and discussions and forgiveness before we get to that grand narrative that is inclusive and everybody can tap into and consider their own.
Okay, talking about this national consensus, Ethiopian House of People, the representatives in 2021 approved the establishment of Ethiopian National Dialogue to set out paths for national consensus and peaceful Ethiopia as well. From the very essence of national dialogue, academically speaking, and your background is somehow on legal studies. What does it mean by national dialogue as a concept?
Yeah, and thank you for reminding me. I studied law for some time. I forgot it from my. Yeah, so to dialogue just means to actually. It's much better than discussion and arguments. Is not back and forth. A dialogue is very open way of listening to listen, and not listening to judge or produce results. It's listening to just collect facts as is, right? And from that we can establish and understand the others. It's amazing that we have something as such in place, but we are having a difficult time to have people's attention drawn to it, because if we clearly see this is the next step that we need to go, once we seize the fires, once we seize conflict, we avoid conflict, which I really focus on that. If we are still in direct and open conflict, it is difficult to come to dialogue. So the ceasefires and quelching that thirst for fighting has to come first, and the people have to push for that. But very next thing is going to, as a solution, we have to have that. And the commission has a mandate, which I have read through by law, that it has a mandate of creating a space and infrastructure to have a grassroots all the way to the top, a collection of questions and negotiating on those and discussing on those. So if we follow that path and create ownership, dialogue will bring about something that is national narrative. So, the path is stop conflict, have dialogue, create national narrative, and then that's the nation building process for me.
We have these three things on table: the national dialogue. On the other hand, we have this grand national narrative. Again, the third one is transitional justice. How do you describe their interdependency?
That those are very independent, and at the core of them, dialogue comes in, right? So transitional justice, especially for such an elongated national narrative that has been scattered across multi-ethnic groups and political interests, to bring these grievances to settlement, there needs to be, after the dialogue, this dialogue by nature will produce agendas of going forward. How do we go forward from these? Right. So things like justice have to be really understood before you get to any healing. You have to actually have justice, and recognition of facts comes before any move towards justice. So recognition of facts is produced from dialogues. If we have clear dialogues, then we will know, we will recognize any grievances and facts and who did what happened. And once we realize those, we know harms done to others. And with justice cannot be served in this at this capacity, with this width, as we have probably noticed in the case of Rwanda and other places where serious ethnic issues and grievances exist. The transitional justice process is going to be not based on legislative or on legal stance as such, like you have committed this, this is your sentence, but it's going to come from a place of interest to create a grand narrative and going forward, right? Once we recognize them, that's where the politics of forgiveness comes in. But for that to happen, first there has to be a full recognition of facts.
Okay, this Ethiopian National Dialogue Commission has scored almost 3 consecutive years, and it is discharging its responsibility somehow. Let's talk about the concept of transparency in this sense. It's an independent entity which is not coached by the interference of the government. So in a case of in a sense of transparency, to what extent should be this national dialogue independent from any other organs, be it government, non-government, whatever?
I think it has to go above and beyond, specific case, because of the great suspicion anything that draws in this political atmosphere we have right now. People would suspect their own shadows, leave alone such a significant commission that is established, a few years ago, 2 years, I think. And transparency is going to be of the highest importance. And to help this, we have been doing in the media, I hold some rooms, live chats, where I bring to stage people who have any suspicion of that this is not a legitimate commission that is working towards its set goals on paper, right? So I ask people, just bring it out here so that we can have a buy-in on such an important institution that we need if we are going to go anywhere. We're not going to go. I'm an ardent believer that we're not going to go anywhere with guns. I mean, guns might do something, and it's called killing, but we might, if we are going to prosper and be a successful nation, we're going to go through a certain degree of dialogue that takes a long time and well established, that leads us to transitional justice and grand narrative, and also to a nation building process, a complete nation building process. So if we're going to do that, let's grasp this thing and make it our own. The people's, it's House of Representatives has heard their report, and the reports have, the way they defended the reports and the way they presented, it seems like they've worked very detailed structure and infrastructure, and it has taken them quite a while. And on the media and everywhere, they were considered to be completely non-functional and out of the image, and that they just nominate, right? And then now they're coming into action, and people are trying to name them that they are just messengers for the executive body and the prosperity party. Before we do that kind of leveling, I always ask people, let's investigate the facts and see how they have been, working on their mandate and not being subservient to any political interest. We have to actually have the facts. We can, guilty until proven innocent is not the right way to go about justice. It's innocent until proven guilty for anything. So this far, I have seen nothing that shows any level of misuse of this legal power this commission has been given. I see that they are working very hard and they're impartial. So ownership has to be had by the people, and the media plays a great role actually in this process, and in any nation building process. Since this is narrative, in this day and age, the media and academia have great roles to play to bring people's interests and attentions towards these things. So, yeah, that's what we have to keep doing.
The commission, has the mandate of moderating and facilitating things to undertake the very long-awaited national consensus in Ethiopia. What will be the role of civic societies, women, and even the government in doing and in facilitating things to undertake the national dialogue? Are we supposed to leave all the tasks to the National Dialogue Commission?
Okay, so I see this in two ways. The first one is there is a role that is already placed in for every part of society, the social structure. They say they have placed methodology of collecting questions. So in our own spheres, if you are Bagada, the singing, the disabled, women, youth, all of these have been represented, and they are expected in the diaspora. People on the media, they have mentioned that there is a place for these people to actually bring forward their questions. So as parts of society, to contribute and be active participants in providing earnest questions that baffle us, that things that we think are issues in Ethiopia, we have to contribute and partake, right? So that is one of the big general parts that we should play. The other one is ownership and advocacy. I have to show ownership that this is my organization. This is not the Prosperity Party's organization. This is not so and so, a certain individual, as a certain executive bodies organization. This belongs to the Ethiopian people. This is mine, right? Just like the Ethiopian people claim that the dam, the Grand Renaissance Dam, is mine. I've seen a lot of posters when I was in Addis. So many of the people, the dam is mine. That's a good attitude to have. The commission is mine is something that we need to say. The commission is mine. This is a commission for all Ethiopians in all walks of life to bring their questions about their country so that they can have a way to move forward with all our differences and grievances. This is a tool that we need more than anything, right? So ownership and advocacy, we have to say, we have to stand for this institution and say, this is mine. That way, the people will be actively involved in the audits through the House of Representatives and through direct engagements and through the media, so that we can audit and make sure that this institution works for its set goals to make Ethiopia go forward and have a nation building factor. Unless we stand behind it, there are external parties that would like to hijack this. Obviously, anybody who understands the ABCs of politics understands when there is this big task given to such a commission, and there is no one claiming it from the populace. Pretty much, you want to take it and you want to have the future of this country in your debt. Whoever pays the piper calls the tunes, and people are trying to pay our piper a good sum of money so that they can call the tunes. Let's be the ones that call the tunes. Let's claim ownership and be actively participating.
Let me proceed to my third discussion point, which is transitional justice. It's on a table to be entertained in Ethiopia as well. Again, I need you to give us your insight about its concept in the very first place. What does it mean by transitional justice, and what are the procedures in which it changed into practical activities to solve the ever existed problems in a certain country?
So transitional justice is, mainly it asks social, political, and legal questions. And it's always a way to move past massive, human rights violations that have been committed in any society. And to go past this, even though the name justice is in there, it doesn't only ask a legal question, right? It asks us a social question, and also it asks us a political question. The resolution of transitional justice is not merely legal. It is, like I've tried to allude to earlier, it is also political, right? So transitional justice is always called for in response to the entrenched and long-term human rights and social human rights violations. Have we had that in Ethiopia, is the question. Yes, we did. We have had but on a great level, especially as we go, back to our history, that we have had many instances where societies have been displaced, killed, and great massacres have happened, subjugations of certain degrees, especially political and social hegemonies that destroyed the culture and identities of people have happened in the Ethiopian history. Whichever side you look at it, it might differ how strongly you believe that.
Ayana Feyissa, a political analyst, social media influencer, and content creator. Thank you for your in-depth commentaries and analysis on the ways, procedures, and application of Ethiopian National Dialogue and this transitional justice as well as grand national narrative.
Thank you so much.
Dear viewers, I hope you had a wonderful insight on concepts and procedures and application of grand national narrative, national dialogue and transitional justice on a table, which are going to be applied in Ethiopia soon. See you next time. Once again, have a wonderful time.